What if the Romans lived on, not in Rome or Constantinople, but in Elysia, the crown jewel of the New World? Third Odyssey, Back to the Motherland is a mod that explores that exact scenario, with the Greco-Romans fleeing their precarious situation in Europe, surrounded by hostile forces on all sides, and journeying to lands unknown across the vast Atlantic Ocean and settling in the lands of Elysium, the New World. This mod is incredibly deep, with each choice you make impacting hundreds of years of gameplay throughout the timeline, with new religions, cultures, multiple playable countries, and much, much more. We're going to be running it with the extra submod for some extra flavor, but that is not required for you to have fun with this mod. If you are as excited as I am to see how it goes, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content to come. While you're down there, make sure to check out the Patreon if you want early access to all the videos that come out on this channel. The last remnants of the Eastern Roman Empire here, Constantinople with a couple of provinces over here around Corinth and Moria. Things are not looking too good for them, but luckily for us, Third Odyssey has a solution for this. I would have explained it in the intro, but for those of you who do not know Third Odyssey, it is essentially a mod that allows the Byzantines to flee to the New World. So for that reason, we are unfortunately going to keep the natives. They've actually been completely reworked in this mod. So things are going to look a little bit different, but for the most part, it should be good, and I am excited about it. And for those that are going to inevitably ask, I am using the Ad Lucem mod with a bolder text font mod for names. It gives the graphical map improvements names, and I've tweaked a couple of the constants to make the water deeper, or darker rather, and I also did something that lowered the saturation, basically just trying to make it look a little bit nicer for what I like. So Ad Lucem, it is on the Steam Workshop, AD_LUCEM. Please link it to somebody if they ask in the comments, because it's probably going to be asked anyways. And of course, the only way to find out what happens in this scenario, speed 5 and unpause. And just 1 month in on Christmas, you can see that we have actually given up Moria as a subject of Genoa. So Constantinople is kind of shedding their baggage, so to speak, and then we're going to see kind of where things go from there. Constantinople is now kaput. It has been given over to the Turks, and now Byzantium is nowhere to be found. And that, my friends, is because Elysia has been founded over here in Chesapeake Bay, with Romania here, the exiled empire, in charge. They do also have a unique flagship, giving them some maintenance, some terrible modifiers to its strength, but it also gives fleet movement speed and fleet attrition. So that's pretty cool. Now they have some extremely punishing modifiers, but for the most part, these things are going to be shed as time goes on. So right now you can see that they are an exiled tech group, which gives them a ton of malices, mostly to tech cost. That tech cost in institution embracement is going to be painful, especially considering that they're a New World native. They also have no trade power because they don't have any merchant class. They have constrained resources, so their colonial range is limited to literally just provinces that they border. Oh, and did I mention that they also have a manpower shortage? So yeah, this is going to be pretty rough on them. However, they do have silk production, so that's one thing that they do have, kind of bolstering their economy, so to speak. An economy which is actually in the negatives day one. So we'll see how things go with that. They do have the 39-year-old Constantine here in charge of a army. He is a 334, so not too bad. Probably going to be pretty good for beating up on natives. They have a couple of other modifiers here as people start to kind of pitch in and get stuff going. You can see they have eager settlers, so they do have some pretty nice settler increase, and they actually get a colonist. So Nea Alexandria is being founded, and you know, I'm sure that they will colonize up the coast as time goes on. And boy, are they growing quickly. It actually looks like they just bought this Ionike province from some natives, so that's a thing. And then Odessos over here is being colonized, so they are definitely growing. Their economy has exploded. I think that is not entirely appropriate. How are they making so much money? My goodness. Script Skynet protocol blessing. Yeah, I think that's a temporary thing, if I had to guess. Now they have one idea group and one idea group only that they are allowed to take, and it is this development ideas. And then after they do that, then they'll be able to select more ideas. So what this does is this is essentially focused on, you know, developing. They get a colonist, some colonial chance, some development stuff, and governing capacity and all that stuff. So this is just kind of getting on their feet, and I believe later on they can switch this out to like an exploration sort of one. But, you know, time will tell. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the intro, but I'm actually using the sub mod or the add-on mod, which is supposed to add a ton of new flavor and stuff like that. So stay tuned. I'm sure there's going to be some interesting changes associated with that. And here we go. We have an interesting breakaway over here on Bermuda. We have Microcrite, or however, I'm going to pronounce all this Greek stuff wrong, so just don't even worry about it. But these guys have a very nice color, and it looks like they are indeed a Greek breakaway state that has set up over here, and they are Cretan. And I believe that these guys will eventually colonize the Caribbean. And then a lot of people, anybody who knows Third Odyssey knows that we're going to see some interesting stuff going on in Mexico. So yeah, it's a little early yet to say what's happening, but they are not allied to them. They are allied to one of the Northmen up here, because yes, there is some Norse nations that have set up shop up here in the northern parts of Newfoundland. So yeah, we'll see how things go with that. The Elysian religious wars are looking to fire. It looks like there is nothing that they can do about it either. You can see here that things are going up. We have the Plathonists versus the Orthodox Christian, which is Eastern Orthodox. That's just a rename of Orthodoxy in this mod. So yeah, curious. They could actually go Hellenic or remain Orthodox with this disaster. So we'll see exactly how things go with that. I'm kind of rooting for Hellenism, but, you know, we'll see how things go. We also now have a great project here, the Theophilan Walls, which give some pretty gnarly modifiers to the actual province of Elysia. So that's pretty cool. We'll see if they can eventually get that up. I don't know if it costs any money, 50 ducats, so they'll probably build it. But yeah, we're going to see some interesting stuff as time goes on. I know that there's quite a few buildings, and I imagine that the submod adds even more. So, you know, we'll see. And now this has nothing to do with Third Odyssey, but Bohemia went Hussite, and I think that that's pretty sweet. And taking a look back at the old world, doesn't look like the Turks have taken too kindly to the Genoese owning those lands down in southern Greece, and they're probably gonna take it, if I had to guess. And 10 years in, Romania is up to 8 provinces, and they have 68 development with a decent bit of tax and production. I'm sure that they would like a little bit more manpower, but they are making their way up and down the coast. They are well into Delaware and down all the way into North Carolina. So hopefully they can make some stuff happen. They've also renamed the Chesapeake Bay to Elysian Bay, which I think is nice. And they also have the Elysian Coast over here. Everything gets some nice kind of fancy names, and I think that the flavor in Third Odyssey alone makes it well worth it. It could be a paid DLC, and I would pay for it. Even though I don't pay for Paradox DLCs because I'm kind of a big deal influencer. It's a joke, don't worry about it. Like, do you guys remember Undead Nightmare, I think it was, for Red Dead 1? People like bought that and played that. They didn't even play the base game. They played the like alternate history mod that was like fantasy. And I think that, you know, Paradox could totally do something like this and people would buy it. I know I would pay for that. And I almost missed this as well. The Skoros silk has been set up here in Elysia. It is a unique trade good specifically to them. You can see they actually produce all of the world's Elysian silk here in this province. So that is pretty cool. And I do think it leads to some stuff later on that will allow them to expand their economy. The Busy Bees are also working away, building aqueducts up into the Appalachian Mountains. And that is pretty cool. They have a Latin quarter. It gives them some local unrest, but on the flip side, gives them some other bonuses. So that's pretty cool. I don't see any Albanian quarters, which they can actually take Scanderbro with them if they do decide to go that route. So it doesn't look like they did this time around, and probably for the better, because you get this little breakaway state and it ends up being kind of a pain in the butt to deal with. But yeah, this is interesting. And I didn't show this because I forgot, but Elysian ideas are actually different from Byzantine. They get naval maintenance, which is nice, and they automatically discover adjacent colonies. And then they get fort defense, idea cost and advisors, morale and recover army morale speed, an extra colonist and naval leader maneuver, an extra diplomat and envoy travel time, an extra merchant and heavy ship combat ability, national unrest, and then their finisher is 5% admin efficiency. So safe to say their national ideas are quite good, very varied in kind of what you get from them, but overall very good. And it appears that Microcrite over here is actually a subject of Elysia. So that is cool. I don't actually know what that changes. I think they'll still colonize. I would be surprised if they didn't. But yeah, Romania here, I keep calling them Elysia. I'm going to use them interchangeably. But Romania here has a subject now over on Bermuda. Now, the Elysian Religious Wars disaster does keep ticking down. I think that they're getting events that will allow them to buy it down, and I assume that the AI is programmed to try to keep it down. I don't know exactly how that will affect their religious reform, so time will tell. but I think that they're going to end up remaining Orthodox, though I think they actually get their own kind of branch of Elysian Orthodoxy, if I recall correctly. But yeah, I'm sure it's going to be interesting regardless. Sadly, their little subject over here is hemorrhaging money and is spiraling pretty hard, considering the fact that they are taking out 3 loans per month. I don't really know what to think about this. I think them being over their force limit is hurting them, but I'm sure that they will manage eventually. And friends, it has happened. We have Romania here, the Hellenic nation. Now, I don't actually know exactly how they chose it, because they didn't have the disaster. It looks like they avoided it altogether. But yeah, they are following Hermes here with global trade power and trade steering, and they are getting everything converted, and a large chunk of their nation already is, with 87 religious unity. So that is pretty sweet. And it looks like Microcrete was actually converted as well. So that is cool. Now, I do have to remember to point it out that these guys have a very big, beefy mission tree, complete with 3 unique branches, all of which give a different sort of flavor and different paths. And they are mutually exclusive, but I believe one of them you can actually go, if you do this one, yes, the Silesian hegemony, you can actually do 2 of them. One is back to the old world, one is colonial, kind of heading over into India, and then one is basically, you know, become America kind of deal. And so they can do 1 or 2, and I think there's a mod that actually unlocks the 3rd as well, but I don't have that one installed. And here we have a little bit of a cultural appropriation on behalf of Romania for the Carthaginians. We have the Grand Kothan, which will give local trade power and some fun stuff, as well as merchant trade range, and Marines, which is super overpowered. You got to be using Marines if you have available. But yeah, so that is pretty cool. We've got a couple of interesting monuments so far, and it looks like they have actually started upgrading the Theophilian walls, which is cool. Also, Vinland has made an appearance. These guys have united, and they actually have a colonist, and they are going to start they're going to start making their way down here. Also, his name is Hvitserk, which is a very cool name, kind of like the name of one of the sons of Ragnar, Gustavsson. So very interesting. These guys are essentially programmed to be the ally early on of these guys, and then their arch nemesis later. A lot of their missions actually require them to like destroy them. So that's pretty sweet. Lads, it is time. We have had the landing. Spartacon has formed over here in the Yucatan Peninsula and Laconia, and they are basically an undead horde that will spread. You'll see. They are an army without a state, basically making them completely useless diplomatically. They are exiled as well. They get this bonus, and I think this is basically just a buff to the AI that the mod gives. They have a lack of settlers, so they can't colonize, which means, yeah, they're going to have to basically conquer everybody. And spoiler alert, they're going to. They have the Rise of Sparta, which gives them 25% discipline. My goodness. Yeah, all of those things are going to lead to them being an absolute powerhouse, and they are going to dominate. And I'm curious to see how they interact with Romania in the long term. I'm actually very curious to see how they react. Uh-oh. It looks like we've got some company here. Portugal settling Puerto Rico. Also, I haven't shown this because I forgot about it, but we have the Barbaroi Council, which, as far as I know, basically this is Greek for barbarian. It's kind of like their view of outsiders. It basically just means outsiders. And so that is their sort of native councils is what this is. And whenever they take over lands that have cultures that are different than their own, like you can see down here, what this does is basically it allows these provinces to have various changes based on the loyalty that they have. And so I think that these guys being loyal is important, but it also allows them to basically get more bonuses from provinces that don't have Greek cultures or Romanian, I don't know, whatever, native cultures. So this is spicy. I think Portugal left the Caribbean and abandoned their colonies at the behest of Romania. With Vinland up in the north doing their thing, colonizing quite a bit, Romania themselves colonizing definitely quite a bit, working their way inland into the continent of Elysia. And meanwhile, in the south, Spartania is steamrolling the Mexican natives. So things are going to get interesting before too long. And I'll check in here and there, even though we are definitely not focusing on the rest of the world. But it definitely looks like Japan is having some issues. Hosokawa and Ashikaga going at it. Korea expanding up into Manchuria. Ming expanding everywhere, looking extremely good for now. And then over in India, we have Bengal, Balmanis, Vijay, and Malwa, the major guys. But Bengal probably going to take off because it's a Chewbert vid. Timmy integrated all of their subjects and are making their way into northern India, so we may see Mughals this time around. The Ottomans have united most of the lands in their area, but they haven't pushed into the Mams yet. And in Europe, we have England getting most of Ireland and Scotland under their control, Denmark integrating Norway, Poland getting gobbled up by Austria, Castile eating most of Aragon, Sardinia popping out, and Naples taking all of their cores back from Aragon as well. Austria has a personal union of Hungary, which explains why they have a bunch of land surrounding them. So definitely going to put the Ottomans in check, which is pretty interesting. Meanwhile, France going buck wild, integrating all of their subjects, taking over Brittany as well as parts of Savoy, and even pushing their way into Lorraine. And here we go in 1510. This is what I'm talking about. We have a beautiful purple Elysia, which is actually a submod because it's green in the base game, because reasons, I guess. We have a Varangian Order, which is a subject nation of Elysia. Look at that dope flag. I am a big fan of that. And likewise with the formation of Elysia, we have Cecladia over here in the Cecladian Isles, they will now be dubbed, and they are colonizing a bit, and they have their capital set up over here in New Syracuse, which is pretty sweet. Also, they have a very nice color. I like the color. Meanwhile, Spartacon continues to expand, and they are no longer Spartacon. Actually, they are Spartania. And now Elysia has another great project here, the Hippodrome, which gives some cavalry bonuses. So that would be pretty cool for them to build. And just across the bay, we have the Alexandrian Library, which gives tech cost, which will definitely help make up for that exiled malice, institution spread, and advisor cost. So all solid modifiers to have. And the art of the deal here for Elysia, you can't have enemies if they are all your friends. We have Spartania and Vinland both allied to Elysia. Also, I apologize if you can hear my daughter screaming bloody murder in the background. She is hungry, and my wife is feeding her. So yeah. And an interesting development, we have Aztlan over here, which is morale of armies and missionary strength versus heretics. It appears that this is kind of a reformation of Hellenic that kind of brings in the Nahuatl sort of syncretism sort of thing, maybe. I don't know, but it looks pretty cool. We also have the Spanish over here setting up Cuba in Spanish Cuba. Definitely directly competing with Cecladia, so we'll see if there's some interesting stuff to be happening there. We also have the Portuguese down in Colombia as well as over in Brazil, and even the French are getting in down here in Suriname. We have a united Inca, and it's just overall a very interesting sort of development going on for the New World. And in the worst timeline, we have the British landing over here in Quebec, right across from the Danes landing over here in this Penobscot whatever. So it looks like the Vinlandians may have a little bit of a kind of competition up here, but they're probably going to be fine if I had to guess. Though we'll see how things go for Denmark, considering the fact that they are currently in a war with Muscovy and they're losing. So they're very strong, but we'll see how things go with that. I think they might be able to form Scandinavia via their mission tree. I don't know exactly how Denmark's mission tree looks in the Lions of the North DLC, but you know, we'll see how this war with Muscovy goes in their colonial game. I'm sure we'll be affected by that. Oh, and lads, it is starting to heat up. Less than 100 years in, we've already got the French over here in Mexico and the British over here in Nolans. So it looks like we're going to see a little bit of some spicy fighting going on between the New World nations and the Old World. And one interesting flavor thing that you'll see in this mod is you'll have these natives who basically like interact with Elysia are converting to their religion. So we have the Muskogee over here have converted, as well as the Mohicans up here are now Hellenics, Hellenic North American natives. Very cool. And in today's episode of Guess Who Got the Burgundian Inheritance, East Frisia of all people. And hilariously, it looks like after the war with Muscovy, Denmark's borders over here in Finland are like post-Winter War borders. They had land all the way down to here and they got pushed back, giving a little bit of breathing room for St. Petersburg, right? I'm sorry, Leningrad. And yeah, I definitely have to show off some of the interesting stuff in the trade map mode. The Cecladian Isles down in the Caribbean, and it looks like the east coast of America has been split with Apalachia and Bay of Elysia, and then Erickson Gulf, the Great Lakes is normal, and then Andronica over here in Louisiana. So definitely some interesting stuff going on with that. Also, the Bay of Elysia trade node is an end node, which means if they can steer their trade over here from Sevilla, things can definitely get pretty lucrative in the Bay of Elysia. And it would appear that the AI's judgment has been passed and they are looking inward. which is the green path, which is essentially be big and strong over here on the continent that is Elysium, you can see there. So yeah, it looks like Elysia is not going to be looking to go into the old world, but they may eventually after they get this Elysian hegemony. So all they need to do is become a hegemon, and they can get economic hegemon pretty easily considering the fact that this node is going to be super rich as time goes on. So, you know, we'll see. Also, the colonial game is really starting to heat up, but Elysia has integrated the Cycladian Isles, and they even have some land down in Panama. Meanwhile, their ally of Spartania is growing, but I think that they've basically maxed out. I don't think they're going to be able to colonize for a while. But those British and French colonies are going to probably be problematic for them. And we have an Elysian defense of the homeland. Apparently, it's actually the second one, and I missed the first one. But Great Britain has attacked Elysia, and Elysia is putting in the work. 10% overall, but you can see here, British Louisiana not looking too good. The Hellenics are going to be beating up on the Anglicans. It's only a matter of time. And meanwhile, the natives are modernizing, and we have the Chahotia, the Haudenosaunee, and the Muskaki over here are all settling in the area, and they're probably going to end up being a decent block, stopping Vinland and Elysia from expanding. My God, no wonder Elysia is able to just steamroll through Great Britain. Their ally of Vinland has 93 ships. They have 131, and Spartania has 89. Meanwhile, Great Britain over here with 50. And if you can believe it, Elysia has actually landed men and occupied the entirety of the Emerald Isle. That is awesome, and I love it. For some follow-up idea groups, it looks like Elysia went defensive, expansion, and now trade, and they are going to get very rich off this. We are about to see an extremely powerful Elysia, especially when they finish trade. They are up to a whopping 5 colonists, and it is their golden era. Yeah, safe to say it is really an Elysian golden era. And yes, they actually took all of the British colonies here in Louisiana, and they now have an open frontier to begin colonizing the heartland of Elysia. And meanwhile, time to eat up some natives, because why not? They're actually even allied to these guys over here for now. There is definitely some shenanigans afoot. Elysia has apparently Yucatan, because that's a thing, I guess. They also have some land down here in Venezuela, but take a look. They leapfrogged up here and cut off Spartania from the coast. My goodness, these guys are jerks. They're still allied as well, so probably not for long. Meanwhile, Elysia kicked these Iroquois boys out of Ohio and Pennsylvania, and it looks like they were kicked out of upstate New York by Vinland, who is definitely getting bigger. Okay, Arcadia here. They actually have a colonial nation in South America. I didn't know that they could do that, but they definitely can. The reason being is that their capital is technically not in colonial Elysian coast, so they can actually form colonial nations outside of their continent. So that's a thing. That's cool. I didn't know that they would do that, but they did it, and I hope that they can survive. We'll see. They are kind of surrounded by a lot of green. And in 1600, things are definitely picking up outside of the New World, so let's take a look. Across the pond over here, we have the Vinlandic North Atlantic Islands, and then we also have Vinland in Ireland. Apparently, we also have Portugal and France in Spain. The rest of Europe is mostly a mess. East Frisia still in Burgundy is hilarious. And Austria integrated their subject and is, yeah, they're blobbing. They're blobbing pretty good. Russia has formed and is eating up Scandinavia, to say the least. They're bordering Stockholm over there. So, yeah, probably only a matter of time before they, unite Scandinavia, so to speak. The Ottomans and Timurids are splitting the Mamluks, but it looks like the Ottomans are going to get most of the development all the way down into Egypt. And of course, China collapsed and Japan is united. Bengal, Bahmanis, and Malwa are the major guys in India, but Malwa currently getting their cheeks clapped by Bahmanis. Over here in sub-Saharan Africa, we have Ethiopia taking over a bunch of the land, working their way all the way into the Sahel. The Sahel, which is still very much a mess, minus the coast, is mostly Spanish, with one Vinlander province right here in Wari. South Africa is Portuguese, and the Portuguese are also setting up shop over here in Australia. Norse Vikings setting up shop here in the mouth of the Amazon. That is very cool. And meanwhile, Elysia is over here trying to clean up the poo-poos in the streets of San Francisco. Now, I may or may not have went to a doctor's appointment for my daughter and left the game running the whole time, so it finished. But yeah, we're in 1821, and we're going to take a look at how things turned out. The borders between Elysia and Spartania actually didn't change at all, from what I can tell. And it doesn't look like they ever went to war with this Cahokia, who I believe remains their ally to this day. We'll take a look. But clearly they pushed Vinland out of Vinland. There's only a couple of provinces up there at this point. Vinland's capital here in Eriksfjord with one of the coolest hats that I have seen in EU4. And if you can believe it, these guys are still allied to Elysia after all the shenanigans they pulled, leapfrogging them with colonization. Spartania, you put up with too much, man. Soy boy. Their colony down here in Arcadia ended up doing basically nothing. So that's a thing. They did also end up with a colony down under called Antiopodia or Antiopodia. I don't know how that's pronounced, but yeah, there they go. They went overseas. Spartan La Plata is definitely a thing, but for the most part, it's Portuguese, but apparently Dutch Brazil exists in this timeline, so we can't forget about that one. Spain ended up doing the Spanish thing and conquering quite a bit of land around the coasts of Africa, all the way down over into East Africa as well. So respectable amount of conquest for them. Ethiopia managed to maintain the conquest that they had, even with the Ottomans pushing them back. And I think they may have lost a couple of provinces to them, but overall did very well in their own respect. Also based Elysian Benin, right next to the homies. So over here we have the Elysians in Sri Lanka, right next to the Decanis, right next to a massive Malwa, right next to a massive revolutionary Timurids. This game never ceases to amaze me. Shun ended up doing okay, even though the Timurids pushed them out of the western parts of China. They even got a large chunk of Korea, and it looks like they probably took it from Japan, who lost some land over here to Rusland. So there's some changes to the borders. Also, I don't know how, but Elysia has random provinces over here in Russia. So yeah, okay. We have an Elysian Malaccas, and then they have a couple of random provinces spread throughout the Indonesian islands. But looks like most of it is actually Spanish with some Japanese Malaccas over there. So that's pretty sweet. Of course, Russia formed, as you saw, but Europe has some weird border changes. Spain ended up taking Connacht over here from Ireland, which was an independent nation. Elysia managed to take this island of Pale from Vinland, as well as the Faroe Islands, because of course we all know about the Greeks that settled the Faroe Islands, right? Scandinavia formed, but of course we have a couple of Elysian provinces over here. They're seemingly everywhere at this point. And we even have one Elysian province over here in Azov, because reasons, but I think we know the reason. I think we know why they wanted Azov. Now, the Commonwealth and Austria both look pretty healthy, but you're going to notice a couple of random provinces owned by Russia throughout Germany and just Central Europe as a whole. We have lands up in northern Italy, Sicily, a couple of provinces over here in Serbia, even some land up here in the north. So I assume that they inherited a PU or something. And then you look at the religious map mode and you think, what happened here? The Empire of Austria is Eastern Orthodox with a von Prank, or however you would pronounce that, as their leader. I assume they fell under a PU, under the Ruskies, and then they ended up breaking free. That's the only way I can think about it, because they have a von Habsburg over here in Russia. But yeah, they must have force converted them, because Eastern Orthodox reigns supreme over here. And Great Britain is Catholic, not Anglican. Meanwhile, their colonial nation is Anglican. I don't know. I don't get it. Religion in the northern continent here is mostly Hellenic, with this Aztlan over in the central part, but that's to be expected. The Catholic portion over here is definitely a French colony, which... whatever. Meanwhile, the natives maintained their totemist faith. They have a couple of Hellenic provinces, I assume, which spawned via event. But yeah, they remain totemist. South America is Aztlan down just the tip, though, and then Catholic throughout most of it, with a Protestant in the Dutch colony. Now, the cultural map mode is where things get a little bit interesting. We have the Elysians here on the coast. This is kind of like the core culture, the East Coast culture. Then we have Illyric here, sort of on the interior, across the Appalachians. We have Simashoy, which I think is from the natives. I think that's kind of like a hybrid native culture, if I recall. We have the Hesperidians over here. These are the ones who just smoke a lot of pot and sit around on the couch all day and refuse to work, but then, you know, expect things from the government. And then we have the Thulians, or however this is pronounced, over here in Cascadia. So that's pretty sweet. Tons of cultural changes over here in Spartania. We have this Pochka, as well as this I have no idea what any of this is. We have the Apagonoi, which I think is their primary culture, but there's very few and far between. And then this Pipilton, or whatever that is. So there's definitely a lot of cultural stuff going on, which I think is pretty sweet. Oh, of course, we have the Cycladians and the Arcadians in the south. You can't forget about them. And Vinlandic as well as Volmater here in the central portions, which I think is really sweet as well. Looks like Vinland actually made all the way over to Vancouver Island, so that is cool. Meanwhile, Hungarian culture pushed the Bosnians out of Bosnia. Romanians replaced a bit of Bulgaria, and I'm not going to say anything about this one. Gascon pushed a bit into northern Iberia, and the Ruskies replaced a lot of the Swedes with Karelians. So that is awesome. And it looks like the Novgorodians actually pushed all the way into the Baltic area as well. And it looks like the Baltic states were replaced with Novgorodians. I actually think that that may be a contentious topic in modern day. I remember I spoke to a girl from Latvia, and she said that there's actually a very large proportion of the country that speaks Russian. And she said that it was like a contentious topic there. So I don't know. I'm sure you guys over there in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, you'll know a little bit more about it than I do. Muscovites in Siberia, no surprise there. As well as the Ruskies in Vladivostok. And generally I don't do this, but I do want to take a look at the timeline with you guys and kind of see the evolution of Alesia. So you can see here Romania taking up a decent bit of the coast. Spartakon, which just formed Spartania. And Alesia has formed, and they are starting to push through. But these guys, they blobbed up. And I remember in my own game, these guys were a problem. I had to end up beating up on them pretty good. But meanwhile, Vinland and Spartania are their allies. And eventually they took over the British land, started colonizing a bunch of land over here. But looks like they got cut off by this Cahokia guy. Meanwhile, Vinland made their way all the way over. And then, dang, they just got chomped by those guys. And it looks like not a whole lot changed for like a couple hundred years or so. And then meanwhile, Vinland started to get gobbled up by Alesia and this Cahokia. So yeah, it looks like a lot of it actually just happened in the last like 100 years or so. And meanwhile, a couple of provinces here and there were taken, but looks like most of it was done via colonization rather than actual conquest. So pretty cool. If you guys enjoyed Third Odyssey and you want to see stuff like this in the future, make sure you leave a comment below with your suggestion because I'm open to suggestions. If you like the video, make sure you leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel because there is plenty more to come and you're missing out if you are not subscribed. If you want to join my Discord, my subreddit, my Twitter, those things are all linked in the description below the video. And if you haven't already supported me on Patreon, you can get early access to every video that comes out on this channel for as little as $5 a month. So consider checking that out, link in the description below. But that is all I've got for you for this one. I hope you are all having an absolutely wonderful day. I want you guys to all know, each and every one of you, that I love you, no homo, and I'm wishing you the best. Either way, lads, that is all I've got for you today. Till next time, stay chill.